I have been giving these lectures about clinical evidence for cannabis since 2012, 13, 14, so it's been many years. And there have been many positive changes. If you look, in 2017, we had 156 studies ongoing. 2019, there are 867. Maybe this isn't as fast as we would like, but nevertheless, it's improving. I want to focus on pain. There are 97 studies ongoing in 2019, 43 including cannabidiol. Why do I want to focus on pain? Because we talk a lot about the various activities of cannabis, and to go back to basics and not necessarily to pyramids and Romans, in 20s, just about every pharmaceutical company marketed cannabis extract for pain. And if you look at it, some of the names are still recognizable today. And some of these names are aiming to do it again. So we started using cannabis for pain thousands of years ago, and also in 20s in Europe and Americas. And we are going full circle. We're producing more data on animals, and just about all of them clearly support the use of cannabis and cannabinoids in pain for humans. And if you look at 2011, Colorado, in the registry for medical marijuana, 94% of patients who registered to use marijuana for chronic pain. I will go through the studies that do support it, starting from 2010, 177 patients, 2 weeks, THC plus CBD was superior to placebo. In 2011, 15 of 18 trials demonstrated significant analgesic effect. Not many serious adverse events, or adverse events mild to moderate, and clearly the evidence that cannabinoids are safe and modestly effective. I have to qualify it modestly effective. What we have today in our pharmacies and what we can purchase is also modestly effective. And that's why we have opioid crisis. Two reviews conducted by Canadian researchers, 18 randomized controlled study in 11 studies, altogether 29 trials included about 2,000 participants with about several weeks treatment duration. 22 of the 29 trials demonstrated significant analgesic effect. Among many trials, there are several where the authors concluded that there is insufficient evidence for recommendation for cannabinoid use for pain management in rheumatic disease. But many others say to the contrary. Cochrane review, as you know, Cochrane review is used very much in the UK to recommend which drugs are qualified for reimbursement, and the conclusion based upon 16 trials with 1,750 patients concluded that the potential benefit of cannabinoid-based medicine, CBM for short, in neuropathic pain may be outweighed by the potential harms. Neuropathic pain. 28 studies with about 2,500 participants. 12 investigated neuropathic pain, 3 looked at the patients with cancer pain. And these studies generally show improvement in pain measures with the odds ratio of 1.4. There are a number of studies. I will not talk about detailed data because of the lack of time, but there are a number of studies that support opioid-sparing potential, synergistic effect with opioids, all published evidence. Pain in malignant disease, 15 out of 18 trials demonstrated significant analgesic effect. Recently published study on the use of cannabis in 3,000 cancer patients showed significant improvement in the control of other common symptoms such as sleep problems, fatigue, anxiety, depression, nausea and vomiting. What does it mean? That beyond pain, clearly cannabis and cannabinoids are candidate for a much broader range of symptoms control in palliative care settings. And interestingly, there are increasing number of organizations that provide guideline or support for cannabis use in pain. So Canadian Pain Society cautiously supported third-line option for the treatment of neuropathic pain. It's not the first line, but nevertheless, the option is there. The Health Canada provided guidelines to use smoked cannabis for the treatment of chronic non-cancer pain. Special interest group for neuropathic pain of the International Association for the Study of Pain provided weak recommendation against use of cannabinoids in neuropathic pain because of fear of negative results such as nausea, abuse, diversion, and long-term health effects. May I remind you that many of these people will be on opioids, and the side effects would be much worse than those derived from cannabis. The National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine, 2017, evaluated over 10,000 scientific articles and established that there is a conclusive or substantial evidence to use cannabis for treating chronic pain. Integrative Alternative and Complementary Therapies Editorial Board, for those who don't know, is the group of people connected with NIH in US, states that pain relief is one of the potential benefits of cannabis and cannabinoids for people living with cancer. So clearly the support is growing. I'd like to mention a couple of issues that are there to be addressed. The PK of THC and CBD and cannabis is not that well known. We have a number of published information, but really what we know is mostly from GW studies with Epidiolex and Sativex, because they were well researched and the data is publicly available and so on. And if you look at the doses, we know that pain relief can be achieved at much lower doses. So we don't know to what extent that is relevant. At the same time, what we know that cannabidiol, that is very favored by millions of people around the world, is metabolized by two enzymes, CYP3A4 and CYP2C19. I'm sorry, there are no nice names for these enzymes. What is important is that when you administer cannabidiol with some of the drugs that are metabolized by those enzymes, if it's an inhibitor, you increase cannabidiol plasma concentration. If it's inducer, you will decrease CBD concentration. And we need to remember that for CYP2C19, there are about 500 drugs that are metabolized by these enzymes to varying degree. Humans have a big polymorphism, genetic polymorphism and sensitivity to these enzymes. And there are about over 500 SNPs that have been detected in that gene, and the frequencies in populations are known. This enzyme is involved in antimalarials, oral anticoagulants, chemotherapeutic agents, anti-epileptic, proton pump inhibitors, antivirals, and antidepressants. The other enzyme is involved in the metabolism of over 1,900 drugs. There are many SNPs that have been identified as a polymorphism in this gene, 25 of which have known clinical significance. Does it mean we need to be frightened? I don't think so. I think the controversies that we're all facing around the world are how to produce, supply, and administer cannabinoid products. And the question is, do we need more regulations or collaboration? Collaboration between governments, ministries of health, academics, and physicians. Because what I've just shown you is an overwhelming evidence for use of cannabis, cannabinoid-based product, at least at minimum for the treatment of pain. We can't ignore that data. And together with that data, we need to look at benefit-to-risk ratio, and we need to work together to get the best ways of administration in a most responsible manner. It will not help to be negative about it, or we just have to find the way of working together. With all of this, we have a dramatically growing market. And if you look at, it's very interesting that US started the prohibition many years ago, and US now leads the way in legalization. It's kind of ironic that that's what we ended up with. If you look at the amount of money, and that's in billions, that is being spent, will be spent on different continents, we know we are dealing with something that's hard to stop. And I think as professionals, we have a degree of responsibility to help patients and the governments to make the right decisions. There are big hopes for Europe because there are countries that are legalizing to bigger or lesser extent. There are various issues. And I think there are also hopes for amazing markets. If you look at the statistics of Europe, with the population exceeding 700 million, with high GDP, with a high healthcare expenditure, by the way, that's in trillions, with a big beauty and wellness spending, and estimated total regular and irregular use at 12%. The markets, the commercial focus for these markets are very positive. But please note a little footnote here, that these estimates are based on a fully legal and regulated market. We do need regulations, but not the ones that would stop us from using what seems to be a very plausible and positive intervention. You can't talk about pain without looking at opioid crises, and that would require probably separate lecture. But we have an unprecedented opportunity to get good medication to people who need it. And I want to share my personal story. I'm originally Polish. Last year, my sister died, and she died on morphine, even though the cannabis was legal. We can't afford to do it. We have to make a difference. Few words about, you've seen Maitland and on all these slides. I have owned for many years a lab in the UK, in London. I merged with a pharmacy in the United States that is FDA regulated. We have ability to produce GMP medication. And during that time, CBD had become legal, so now I can actually work with CBD. I have been on the receiving end of difficulties in the US. It's taken us, we are in the process of releasing new medication. It's taken us 2 years because the EA told us that we needed class 1 facility, which we didn't have. And only 2 months ago, they told us now we don't need it because the legislation has changed. But I think all these problems can be overcome if we work together, share the data, and if we actually ignore what I consider minor issues. We can make a decision on how we use the drugs that are available to us via provision of responsible data. And I think there are a lot of people in this audience that have and will contribute to making it happen. I think we need to share the data, expand this. It is my 3rd or 4th participation in this conference. I'd like to see it grow to 20,000 people because that's what's needed. Reasonably priced conference where the data can be shared and the forces can be joined. Thank you very much.